I heard that you were supposed to come in today. I thought you were green. No worries, everyone has been there. Hi, I'm Caleb. Even though it feels like much longer on most days, I've been scuba diving for 27 years, since the incident crouching causes my knees to crack. My left ear hasn't worked properly, and I still smell like rust, even when I'm completely dehydrated. You need lightning fast learning skills or a stroke of luck if you want to remain in this area of business. Listen. On occasion, it's both. Unless you master the art of survival, you will not endure. The hardware in the hangar is probably not new to you. They hung dry suits like empty skins from the racks of suits, which resembled small soldiers lined up with tanks. It appears like everything is going well, perhaps even admirably heroic. Scuba diver for rescue missions seems heroic, doesn't it? So I'll tell you something right off the bat. It makes no difference to the water. If you're retrieving a briefcase from a long-forgotten official or rescuing a child from a bus, it makes no difference. It doesn't matter how cautious you are, the water will still crush you. It all began for me in SR. That was in the past, when I still have the courage to make snap judgments, things involving victims, lakes, floods, and cracked ice. You'd think that retrieving lifeless bodies would be the most dreadful form of labor. It was logical, though truthfully it was. You descend to the depths to retrieve a lost person. Someone gets responses from you. Then again, as you age, that changes. A small lag appears in your reflexes. The children begin to run around you at a quicker pace. Instead of being the first person asked for help, people start contacting you for the strangest things. All right, I shifted to salvage jobs on contract, individual conversations. Insurance was a factor on occasion. Wrecked boats, package misplaced, that kind of thing, you know. On sometimes the government's work was discreet, items that weren't meant to be discovered, unauthorized presents. Without knowing the answer, you stop wondering why. You figure out how to control your speech. At some point, you start to resemble the person they call. When something isn't quite right, you know the difference between right and wrong, not because you're clever, but because you've been down there a few times. That is why I am contacting you first. They do not send inexperienced people on those calls, education certainly, but other than that, no, get a feel for the tales before you put your face in the water. However, I'm fully aware that I am presuming too much. I always do that when I go on for too long. The tales will have to wait. The business is where we will begin. First, let's go over the specifics of your agreement. Although the majority of our members are not public figures, we execute our work under civilian contracts. No news releases will be shown to you. Our name will not be shown on trucks. Our wetsuits are devoid of any logo whatsoever. Clothes lines, sealed folders, and encrypted communications all reach us. The military is a source for some. Some from insurers who are reluctant to pay out claims, some originate from anonymous sources, while others have high-priced timepieces, but no last names. Someone needs to descend to fetch something for them. It is understood before divers are sent out that their purpose is not to find a solution, to reiterate for the record, absence of theory and analysis, acquire it and mark it, ground level. The nature of it is irrelevant. A container, a box, an unidentified flying object, a human body, and an improperly placed hatch. Mark it and take pictures of it. Until they dispatch the lift crew, you should just let it be. Plus, you keep quiet about it afterwards. Regardless of how many times it appears when you shut your eyes, privacy is a serious matter for the firm. Please don't be. If you're the type of person who often posts media files, narratives, and films, you will need to detrain yourself from it. The media does not speak with us. This is not a memoir. None of us conduct interviews. We aren't Instagram users. Very well. A non-disclosure agreement that lasts a lifetime is included in the hiring packet. Not many divers bother to read the small print before signing up. There is a single line buried in all the legalese. Exposure to stuff that lacks empirical support is not the responsibility of the company. That is not an error. Longevity exceeds my own. Leave the interpretation to me. Nobody should inquire. No one wants to admit they have any opinions about that line if they've been working there for a while. There is a great salary. It won't take you long to figure it out. It will be deposited into your account promptly in tidy sums. No inferences that you aren't familiar with. There will be no hold-ups. Complete health evaluation, advantages that are good. It will seem like the greatest job you could have ever imagined. This is first-rate hardware. New equipment is provided to all divers on a 6-monthly basis. You'll be donning gear made for depths and pressures that the average person will never encounter. You'll be making use of images, communications, and trackers that aren't sold to the general public. There is no fakery. I can make it work. They are meticulous. Yes, it is correct. Something else, however, subtle will also catch your eye. Employee turnover. There's a slight elevation. We haven't announced it. No one is let go. No, actually, eventually people stop returning. Someone is transferring and you will hear about it. Somebody's name will be called out to you only once. After then, it won't happen again. There's a locker here that nobody has accessed for weeks. Inside the boots remain arranged as if patiently waiting. On occasion, a member of the crew will whisper something. Then he stopped. This could be because she has already moved on. Their statement ends there. They never say anything else, and I think that's all for now. You haven't started yet. Everything is still parched. Having done a few dives will teach you more. Eventually, the most appropriate narratives will surface. Without fail, they do. I actually do have a couple for you, though. The kind of heirlooms that last for generations. My word is not required of you. Frankly, I could understand if you didn't. Listening is still necessary for your own protection. Those tales won't be told around a campfire. They are files, notes taken in the field, parts of a larger project that are not being publicly discussed. Before you go any farther, I'll give them to you. That way you won't freak out when it's your time to go down there and try to figure everything out. Reason being, you're not going to, plus it's unnecessary. All you have to do is be aware of the signs. The first one is one that I give more consideration to than is healthy. The angel dive is what the newbies refer to it as. However, I find that name unsettling. That spot was devoid of any sacredness. An intermediary courier brought the task to our attention, just that there was a priority wreck along the coast. We were not informed who flagged the place. A private boat with shell business coordinates was found trapped to a precipitous cliffside that just crumbled during a storm. Half of the rock face had collapsed into the sea, carrying with it several ancient buildings that didn't appear on any official map. Underneath the debris, the sonar sweep revealed an anomaly, a hollow void where none ought to have been. It appeared as though the ground had formerly been hollow beneath. That is quite usual. Near saltwater limestone is particularly prone to doing that. Over time, caverns do occur, but this one was significantly larger than the norm. Extended, profound. They dispatched us to investigate it. 2 others, I will not mention their names. After this one, they didn't remain around for much longer, and I doubt they'd be happy if it were brought up now. We descended shortly after sunrise. Calmness pervaded the water. It was more visible than I had anticipated. We moved slowly, picking up rock pieces and drawing lines to indicate our routes. The cliff had crumbled, revealing the cave's entrance like a gaping maw. Dangerous corners, crumbling ledges, rusty pebbles that could slip again if you step on the incorrect one. We had progressed approximately 30 meters when we spotted the initial one. On the center of a small ledge stood a shape that resembled a human. Its arms are raised and its face is partially concealed, as if it flinched just before impact. Upon noticing it, we immediately halted our movement. We initially speculated that it might be a stalagmite formation that had grown around a frame over time, or that it could be an optical illusion caused by the cave itself. Underwater, that type of activity takes place. However, as we approached, the intricacy became apparent. Fingers curled in such a way that a mouth's contours were just visible through the spaces between the knuckles. It wasn't merely humanoid in form, it was either a real person or an object designed to resemble one. We discovered a dozen more after a few more meters of exploration. You could find them concealed in cracks, leaning against walls or hunched over on the floor. Figures possibly crafted from a single pale stone or mineral, or perhaps something else totally. They were all different. Something new. a new expression, a new time, and not a single one of them appeared. Calm hands were clasped around the neck of one of them, which was on top of another. Another person's arms were encircling the shoulders of another, the two of them frozen in a tight embrace. One had a weapon look like a blade, caught mid-swing as if time had just stopped an inch from impact. One figure knelt on the cave floor with their face lifted upward, mouth wide, frozen in what looked like some kind of scream. You couldn't look at them all at once. There was too much to take in. We didn't know what the hell we were looking at. We kept our mouths shut down there. Of course, no talking at that. But the cameras were feeding live back to the surface. And someone topside made a comment over the earpiece, said it looked like something out of Doctor Who, those stone creatures that only moved when you weren't watching The Weeping Angels. I remember that show. The older version, anyway. Back when it ran in the 70s, the joke caught on. And before we were even back on the boat, people were calling them the Angels. They didn't really fit the name, though. They weren't all hiding their faces. They sure as hell didn't feel like anything divine. They looked more like the statues you'd find outside a church that had been burned down and never rebuilt. After we got back to the surface, I couldn't let it go. I started digging around quietly on my own time, no specifics, nothing that would break contract, just reading old logs, shipping records, sailors' journals, anything that mentioned strange rock formations near the coast. It took a while, but I found something, a passage in a Dutch ship captain's log from the 1600s. His vessel had wrecked after a storm not far from the same stretch of cliff. He wrote about hiding in a sea cave during the worst of it, and what he saw inside figures, he said, stone people. Dozens of them, he named them the Still Ones. He wrote that they were seamen stuck beyond death, not just any sailors, ones who had fought or deceived each other, or left something undone, people who have died with something unfinished, rage, grief, love with remorse. Somehow it managed to cling to them, and if you believe the story, the water carries them away, all of them, not just their physical forms, but also any lingering, unresolved emotions. I suppose you can say the cave becomes your own personal hell, a temporary location. The earth also opens up to reveal what's been hiding beneath when storms are severe enough. Only a few days after that, the rescue crew arrived. "Stand down," they said. Their mission was to make the area safe for removal by clearing it out and collecting samples. Still not a single object was ever removed. Breakdowns occurred frequently, results were jumbled. Without giving any reason, divers were rotated off the job. According to one of them, the statues had shifted locations in between dives. However, the official scans did not reveal any signs of movement. They stated it was simply poor footage, compression glitches. Eventually, the business sealed the whole site. Quietly, from above, they lowered debris back into the cavern. It was reburied, behaved as though it had never been opened before. We will not follow up if there is no record, as if you could possibly spot them when scuba diving. Those numbers, steer clear of them, hold them firmly, leave the camera at home, stay away from them and don't bother trying to count them, make a note of the spot, and then leave, fast. It seems like something is amiss there. Absolute nonsense. Those figures' identities, where they came from and the reasoning behind their appearance are all mysteries to me. They clearly don't belong, I can feel it. Naturally, no furthermore, anybody with a modicum of common sense will maintain their distance. There are certain riddles that are supposed to stay that way. Next, there are occupations that have nothing to do with mythology. Typical folks, the genuine article, the kind that do worse things than the sea ever could. Everyone assured us it was just a routine recuperation. Male, mid-30s, fatally ill. Recovered while adrift in a southern inlet, close to the boundary of a dock zone that is off-limits. Current was weak and water was shallow. Debris often accumulates between two pylons, which is where the corpse was lodged. It appeared to be business as usual at first sight, going under. Perhaps someone has fallen from a boat and nobody was able to catch them in time. We had anticipated a breeze. Please enter. Clothesline the corpse. Place a mark on the spot. Think about it, return it to me. The task had been performed ad nauseam. Considering the heat, the man wasn't in bad shape. A short time spent on the sea. Perhaps 1 week. The skin revealed a noticeable amount of gas. Looked confused. Looking through the dry-sued window, we did not observe any wounds. He was dressed in an unassuming manner. Pants for cargo shirt, in a dark shade, missing identification and wallet. Very typical, the hands are an exception. Working in this field makes you accustomed to awkward postures. Funny how bodies float, legs become rigid, joints enlarge, arms can twist in unexpected ways. For this reason, the hands didn't first stand out. Not quite right. Perhaps the wrong size, perhaps it was the hue. Skin that is lighter in color than its surrounding tissue. It was as if their exposure had been shorter. We discovered the fingerprints didn't scan until we removed him off the boat. Running fingerprints right away is now considered normal procedure. Someone here has a mobile reader, has a direct connection to the lab, and can identify any file. It's far from ideal, but it provides a foundation for our work. This time, it just wouldn't work. Almost identical. Not a match. Please, try again. I tried it 4 times. Strange. We'll have to look into it further. The situation is identical. It was at that moment when a technician detected the wrinkle at the wrist, definitely not a cut, perhaps more accurately, described as a seam. Upon opening the cuff, we discovered zip ties. Very careful. Always wear 3 on each wrist, tucked away beneath the arm. In light of that epoxy, thick grey with a rough surface that looks like someone tried to fix drywall. Not even an effort to conceal it was made. Somebody stuck the hands in place using construction-grade adhesive, and a bunch of inexpensive plastic ties never belonged to him. His actual hands had been amputated. Those that were fastened to him had been plucked from another individual. As usual, we tagged the site, collected samples, and filed the report. Local authorities were notified due to concerns about potential foul play. However, we did not have authority over that. As soon as we passed the buck, we often disappear. As far as the lab could tell, the wrist cuts were done after the fact. 0 hemorrhage, 0 reaction to trauma. Regardless of who this individual was, he had already died prior to the swap. No action was ever taken by the police, not formally affiliated with us. However, news began to trickle in from Louisiana and Texas a few months down the road. Pieces of dead bodies discovered in bodies of water and shallow canals, arms that have distinct genetic makeups, absent heads. 2 sets of fingerprints were discovered on a torso. In one instance, Frankenstein was the name given to the perpetrator by the media, not due to any scientific or stitching-related reasons. The way he pieced everything together was perfect. The victims did not perceive any discernible pattern. All ages and both sexes are welcome. Someone was known to be missing among them. Some couldn't even find a record of it. What tied them together was the manner in which they were discovered. Permanently submerged, reassembled time and time again, always remembered. After the first corpse, we continued. 2 more were retrieved by me throughout the subsequent 5 months, near Baton Rouge. One was discovered in a knot of canals, yet another caught in a fishing net near the coast. The same approach. The identical epoxy, zip ties and mismatched components. Divers were the only ones who would ever uncover the 2 bodies dumped in those specific locations. Plus, their prints were misaligned with their wrists. I didn't just abandon ship this time. I found myself entangled in the investigation. Assisted a Louisiana homicide unit directly. Various states had been traversed in their pursuit of dispersed remains. It hadn't clicked, though, until we began discovering complete corpses with consistent post-mortem changes. Even though no one had sketched it out, the killer did have a pattern. Water was his favorite, especially liked it. Navigated through rivers, marinas, and cargo docks in any location where currents could wash away dead skin cells and muddle the passage of time. Someone traded out an item for another, both limbs. In one instance, a receding jaw, leaving a mark not to bury the victims. We managed to capture him in the end. Gordon Ellis was a 38-year-old man, mechanical engineer, working freelance. Please be silent. Was on the go all the time seeking contract jobs, valid boat license, no history, discreet enough that no one will ever question you. He was apprehended at a maintenance yard. Within a dry-docked trawler, he had transformed into a mobile office. In the chemical storage area, they discovered gloves, instruments, and specimens. Recoveries, leftover epoxy was a perfect fit. The zip tie brand also did. It was the same with the bone saws manufacture down to the blade's grind pattern. Right now, he's in jail. They have forbidden him from going anywhere near water. Finally, the man with the wrong hands, who we apprehended that first day, went from being an unidentified suspect to a confirmed victim. The 29-year-old boy went missing nearly a year ago. His name was Thomas. Someone finally figured out where he went. The work is unappealing. That kind of thing happens to you occasionally. Graves, non-accidental deaths, moments that will linger in your mind and not be pleasant. The darkest side of human nature will be on display. When no one steps in to intervene, you'll witness the results. However, salvaging the debris isn't the only goal of this effort. It's meant to provide someone on land with the missing component. A figure holding the erroneous hands could provide a necessary link. Someone else's case might be compatible with a designated place. Things like that are significant even if they don't seem so at the time. The job isn't remarkable. Most of the time it's slow, quiet and thankless. But it's solid and well that matters. Because when we do it right, when we find the things no one else could, when we bring back what someone up top needs to see, we give people answers. We help close doors that stayed open for far too long. We help the right people connect the pieces. That's what this job is about, not buried treasure, not mysteries. Typical folks. Most beginners like you don't see it that way at first. They're chasing the adrenaline, but ultimately they understand it, one dive at a time. Now you'll hear a lot of strange stories in this line of business, but the craziest ones don't come from rumors, they come from logs. And this one came across our desk last winter, a Cold War-era submarine. Soviet-built diesel-electric class went missing in 1973. Last transmission occurred in the early hours of January 12th. Routine things, navigation update, complete, calm, no unusual behavior. Approximately 200 miles from the grid, while on a training circuit, it disappeared, remained hidden, removed all traces of pinging. Its presumed demise was due to a pressure implosion or a breakdown in machinery. Quite typical at that era, particularly with that particular group of subs. The water eats up objects fast. Never was any trash discovered. For half a century it was the narrative, following that in the previous year it materialized without a doubt. The NATO mapping crew discovered it on a shelf ledge during a routine sonar survey. Complete hull pattern. There will be no break, no taking apart, minimal dispersion. Whole, no damage whatsoever, as if it had just parked itself on the ocean floor and was waiting. It sat erect. The sub's last known location in 1973 was congruent with the coordinates. We were requested to evaluate it. A thin but specific briefing it was. The collision did not occur. Apparent absence of pressure damage. Paint is still there. Custom. Paint created using spectral analysis. All of the outside lights were still working. The outside of the submarine seems to have been laid last week, 50 years ago, absolutely. Barnacles absent. Complete absence of rusting. Exactly where I said no more than dust. The first warning sign was that metals can age even in very deep water with very low currents and very cold temperatures, especially on a vessel like a submarine, which has spent half a century in total darkness while subjected to pressure and salt water. However, this one appeared to be in pristine condition, without chemical wear, lack of corrosion, perfectly clear. It appeared as though the weld lines were completed in the same month. Preservation was only part of it. It hadn't been touched. We climbed up to the top hatch after approaching from the starboard side. Like it had been oiled yesterday, the locking mechanism clicked. On the inside, there was complete silence. Our presence activated proximity sensors, which caused emergency lights to flash on. It was a success. Controllers became scene response from backup systems. No changes were seen in the internal environment. No one from the crew could be found. We made every bunk. Everyone. All the lockers were shut. Racks were used. to keep the tools safe. In the dining room, dishes remained piled high, no damage, absence of algae. Everywhere is dry, plus there was no damage whatsoever. No bulkheads have collapsed, not a single indication of decompression or emergency evacuation, completely non-existent. It was as if they had all only gone outside for a moment. Among all the peculiarities, the clock system stood out. The synchronization of shipboard clocks, engine cycles, communications equipment, and military-issued timing circuits allowed every Cold War sub to run smoothly. Aiming for discipline, these subs were constructed. An exact time was required for every event. Time continued to tick, each and every one. At 12:44 in the morning, the deck and engine room were completely frozen. 12 January 1973 just ceased. Not burned out, not degraded. The story was different with the logs inside. From the bridge we retrieved the books with the meticulously tidy handwriting and daily notes. The last entry was ordinary location information, the weather notes from the film. That one was in sync with the clock. The clocks had stopped, yet someone had continued writing. Additional 7 hours of entries will be posted, missing data stored digitally. No concerns or unusual occurrences noted. Power levels, duty rotations and sonar sweeps are the only data that is recorded. Standard fare. They seemed oblivious to the fact that the ship had become stuck in time. A climax follows, no concluding statement. Never mind, there is no sign of the crew. With 47 officers and men on board, not a single soul. There was no evidence of ejection use of escape pods or recorded decrease in oxygen levels. Their lockers still contained their folded uniforms, boots arranged beneath bunks. With the exception of the humans, everything is exactly where it should be. As for the diagnostics, we did heat scans, subsurface radar, and electromagnetic field sweeps. The usual. There is zero radioactivity and zero signs of interference or sabotage. From 1973 onward, all records were consistent with the initial Soviet reports, the exception being one item. The original serial number did not match the sub's ID tag that was etched into the inner hull. 2 numbers separated it. The incorrect number is 32 when the correct number is 7. That was communicated to higher-ups. Got a quick reply. Then, mark it, put a seal on it. They retrieved the crew and labeled the location in under 24 hours. We did not expect a recovery off the ship. No samples could be taken. The wreckage was marked as historic. Preservation is recommended. That's just a polite way of saying, don't touch it, stay out of it, and you must not return. It seems like nobody has been back since then. Down there it remains undamaged. Positioned on that precipice. Even if the table and lighting are still arranged, the dive seemed to go on forever. Nothing has been broken. Had no idea how we got there. The whereabouts of the crew remain unknown. Furthermore, there is no way to describe the events that transpired within the 7 hours after the clock ceased to run. As for when somebody last made a note of anything, much like the majority of our work, it is not followed up with simply a space. Since then, no one has been able to explain what happened to a completely intact Cold War submarine that went missing for 50 years, only to be found in pristine shape with its light intact. That is the memorable portion. Not only did they vanish, but the timing was also off. Around 12:44 in the morning, that submarine vanished. At that precise moment, all internal systems ceased recording data. Either the clocks were inaccurate or something occurred that was unrecorded because the crew continued to write entries for another 7 hours after that. Something so devastating that it eliminated 47 skilled sailors while leaving no trace. The absence of debris, water, and human remains. Absolute stillness. Nothing happened after that. People are reluctant to acknowledge the prevalence of such stories. Things that haven't been solved, peculiar wrecks, deserted ships and instruments that cease functioning once you go deep enough, divers who return with altered or non-existent features. Neither publications nor training manuals include these tales. They are passed down in the same manner that I am currently passing them to you. I've always been more of a rational person. I prefer to keep my spirituality to myself. so I won't bore you with tales of curses, fate, or the underworld. Results are reliable to me. Proof, in my opinion, is key. There is a limit to what can be measured, though, and I've been working here long enough to know that beyond that boundary, all that remains is what we have witnessed. If an older person tells you about anything weird they found, you should listen to them. It is imperative that you focus. No, it's not because every story is factually correct. However, you learn to spot the inappropriate with each one. And surviving depends on being aware of what doesn't belong. I'm sharing these stories with you for that reason, on purpose. I hope it will frighten you, reason being this is the nature of the work. Gear skill and following textbook protocol are not everything, a portion of its history. Part of it is being aware of your ancestors' experiences and the reasons behind their decisions. Before everyone had handbooks, it was how we pass things down. Those who had been through the worst would be the ones to sit you down and spill the beans about their experiences. While not every detail could be precisely explained, each and every one served a function. There is a lesson in every story. I'm concerned about that. Plus, this case, serves as a reminder that not all disappearances have a suspicious appearance. There are a few that are truly exceptional. The rule is as follows. When something appears excessively pristine, flawless, or unspoiled, it catches your eye. You can't simply treat a sunken submarine like any other. When it resurfaces with functional lines after being absent for half a century, you decelerate. Why, you wonder? Time is marked and exits are double-checked. Simply said, nothing stays unattended for that long on purpose, and nothing remains concealed at such a depth. Except when it's meant to. You would assume that was the most out-of-the-ordinary recovery I'd ever performed. Obviously it wasn't. A tiny port on Brazil's southeastern coast called Us Request for Recovery. Nameless, faceless, waist-deep water located 80 feet below the surface. Even though it had been reported, the local authorities were unable to bring it to justice due to a lack of necessary resources. We were completely submerged. The silt and greenish water is agitated by the river runoff and the tides. Even when the weather is nice, visibility is poor. The bottom isn't visible until you're almost touching it. Along that stretch of shoreline you can find half-buried steel from half a dozen lost ships, as well as rusted chains and scrap anchors. The majority of them have decayed during the 1980s and 1990s. Take your time and don't rush into anything. We eased into the dive, following the line coordinates as we descended. From a neighboring collapsed hall, the sonar detected a dense metal signature anchor chain. There was a fire in the engine room that caused the freighter to sink in 1994, according to reports. Among the 37 crew members, none have been reported as missing passengers. There has never been any official effort to retrieve it. It wasn't worth it to deal with the cargo. 2 strong wraps around the ankles bound the corpse to the anchor chain, which was discovered 20 feet from the stern. The leg bones solidified with time and the rope became welded to their surface. He failed to float. He seemed to have been placed there, his back leaning on the chain as he hung just above the seabed. Everything appears to be in its original, undamaged state. A tuxedo black jacket and shirt that had faded to a pale grey from exposure to water adorned his attire. His tie was still snug. There ought to have been years of decay for the fabric in that setting, though it hadn't. It was undamaged, though faded and stiff. The skin resembled coral in that it was tough, velvety white-grey, and calcified. No gas or wasting of soft tissues detected. The features remained unaltered. His mouth was brimming with marine glass and his eyes were wide open. Variegated greens and browns, typically the kind that has been worn down by the sea. It was as if someone had jammed a clutch of parts under the teeth and then slammed the jaw shut. At this point, the jawline is unharmed. No need to take a break. At the time of or immediately following the incident, the mouth was open. The corpse did not go down or up when submerged in the water. Regardless, we surfaced, tagged, and hauled him up the following day in a sealed case. The local coroner's office was contacted, but they were unable to locate any matching records in their database dental files or domestic or foreign missing people files. He did not have any paperwork on him. Unmarked, body art, nothing. We made every effort to come up with a name. Looked through local marriage records dating back 30 years. While they are getting married, look for any men who have been reported as missing at sea. Investigate the ship manifest in case someone had illegally boarded not a match. Finally, nobody stepped forward. There was nothing more than a corpse, a suit, and a date. While we were still on the premises, an elderly dock worker who lived there brought up a story he had heard when he was a child. They refer to him as the groom of the bay. He informed us, used a casual tone when saying it. Everyone seemed to know. He informed us that those places had an old tale that has been passed down through generations. In the days leading up to their wedding, parents would share this with their children. A cautionary tale, not just a terrifying one. The wedding wouldn't go place if, before you were married, you went swimming alone and spotted a man waist-deep in the water with his hands clasped and eyes open. Either the bride or the groom would disappear without a trace. On occasion, a storm might occur. At times much worse, the marriage was supposedly already gone if you saw him, according to them, assuming it hadn't begun, and hence it was instructed that the couples not set foot on the beach prior to the wedding. A lot of superstition, such as donning an ill-suited colour or navigating a ladder, however it was followed. To this day, it is a part of the timetables of local wedding planners. Entering the shore is not possible. Missing dock photographs as a precaution. They didn't even appear astonished when we recounted the tuxedo anchor and sea glass that we had found. A few of them gave nods. According to their reasoning, it is consistent with the legends, claimed the man was anonymous. The fact that he was either betrayed or cursed depends on who you ask. After being abandoned at the altar, some claimed he committed himself by drowning. According to other accounts, his family was enraged and killed him. The tuxedo, the water, and the open eyes were the only constants. Even the glass was brought up in one account. It was reported to have filled his mouth. Thus, we were unable to make a distress signal. That aspect lingered in my mind. Usually, I wouldn't dismiss it. If the facts don't tell the whole story, then folklore will. However, this was no hazy sighting or captured shadow. Connected to a shipwreck that bore no resemblance to him, this was a whole corpse in its natural state, preserved to an unreasonable degree. He appeared to have been placed there, and there's no way to explain why. Rather than becoming disoriented, no one was reported missing. Nobody was hurt. Who knows how long he had been in that cave for? Nothing matched him, yet the newscaster did. The wreck from 1994 used the same metal and the same part number. Definitely not. This could indicate that he was either listed after the ship went down or that he was added later using salvaged chain. However, the corpse did not appear to be 94 years old. It had seen no signs of aging. We turned it over, submitted the report, and then proceeded. No ID, there are no prints present, absolutely no belongings. There is no formal document that can be used to compare him. A male body that could not be identified was marked, taken as having occurred in the past. The file closed within a few weeks, just another abnormality wrapped up and tossed aside. But although I still think about the way he appeared, not panicked, not tranquil either, just motionless, like he'd been waiting down there for someone to find him. Therefore, I will tell you this. It is important to take the advice of locals when working in new areas. Not all of their claims are based on superstition. Sure, some stories are purely entertaining, but others serve as cautionary tales. Some of the older ones have survived because their owners witnessed something interesting once and thought it would be best to keep it in their memory, sort them out, and give your whole attention to the ones that matter as a precaution. For the time being, that is all I can say. Everyone has heard the tales. I mean, at least the ones I believe you're prepared for. I can think of many more. Someone more peculiar than you might think. Some are significantly worse. Such matters, however, can be postponed. Until now, you haven't spent nearly enough time under. This is only the surface level. These stories are just the beginning. From above it appears calm and serene, like the water's surface, withholding all information. Beneath, all day long you may just listen to me. Well, it could be useful. However, nothing beats experiencing it firsthand, emotionally drained, being alone with your own breathing, discovering an unexpected artifact on the ocean floor. It begins to alter your character at that point. My intention in sharing these tales is not to frighten you. Okay, I'm not attempting to construct a complex mystery based on concepts that elude me. What the manuals don't cover is what I'm providing you with. This is the type of information that seasoned divers use to impart to one another. Also, as I mentioned earlier, there is a lesson in every narrative. You never know when these teachings might be life-saving. This profession isn't about storytelling, though. Taking action is key. Scuba diving, getting back what other people can't. Never mind. That it's simple. No, that's not the case. On the other hand, it's actually possible. There's no other legitimate purpose for our descent. We've been briefed. We're okay. We remain calm, even when faced with unusual circumstances. Once the moment comes, we come to the surface. And when it's necessary, we keep quiet. Before long, you will have your very own tale to tell. Until then, remember to have a clear head, clean gear, and tight lines. Here we go again. Obtain your attire. We must complete this task. There we also offer early release. Your attention to tonight's tale is appreciated, wishing you a restful sleep.